Clint Eastwood was born Clinton Eastwood Jr. on May 31, 1930, in San Francisco, California, growing up during the hardships of the Great Depression. His family lived modestly, and those early years shaped the stoic independence that would later define both the man and his screen persona. Before Hollywood ever took notice, Eastwood worked ordinary jobs, including lifeguard, forest firefighter, and steelworker, learning discipline and self-reliance far removed from glamour. His time in the U.S. Army during the Korean War further reinforced a sense of structure and quiet endurance. Acting was not an obvious destiny, but a gradual realization sparked by curiosity rather than ambition. These formative experiences grounded Eastwood in realism, giving him a perspective that later allowed him to observe Hollywood not as an enchanted world, but as a flawed human industry shaped by ego, power, and personality. Rising through a changing Hollywood, Eastwood's rise to fame began with television, most notably his role as Rowdy Yates on Rawhide, which introduced him to audiences nationwide. Yet true stardom arrived when he traveled to Italy to collaborate with Sergio Leone on the Dollars trilogy. These films transformed him into an international icon and reshaped the Western genre with their moral ambiguity and stark realism. As Eastwood's career accelerated, he witnessed firsthand the transition from the tightly controlled studio system of old Hollywood to a more director-driven era. He stood at a crossroads between generations, working alongside figures shaped by an earlier code of behavior while forging a new, more restrained professional identity. That unique position gave him insight into how Hollywood once operated, including attitudes and behaviors that were accepted then but questioned later. Becoming a filmmaker with his own code. As Eastwood matured, he moved behind the camera, discovering that directing allowed him to lead with calm authority rather than intimidation. His films emphasized efficiency, respect on set, and trust in actors, a quiet rejection of harsher methods he had observed earlier in his career. Works like Unforgiven and Million Dollar Baby reflected not only artistic mastery, but also a moral evolution, challenging old myths and simplistic notions of heroism. Eastwood's directing style stood in contrast to some of the louder, more domineering personalities he encountered in Hollywood's past. He came to believe that greatness did not require fear or cruelty, only clarity of vision. This belief shaped his reflections on earlier generations, whose talent he admired, but whose personal conduct sometimes troubled him. Reflecting on old Hollywood's culture. In later years, Eastwood has spoken carefully but honestly about the atmosphere of classic Hollywood. He has never positioned himself as a moral judge, but as a witness to a system that rewarded power without accountability. The industry once normalized behavior that would now raise serious concerns, particularly toward younger actors and women with little influence. Eastwood has acknowledged that many legends were products of their time, operating within rigid hierarchies that encouraged dominance rather than collaboration. His reflections are less about condemnation and more about clarity, recognizing that talent and troubling conduct often coexisted. By sharing these observations, Eastwood has offered a reminder that cinematic greatness does not erase human flaws, and that progress comes from examining, not romanticizing, the past. Challenging the myth of untouchable icons, Eastwood has long resisted the idea that fame should shield anyone from scrutiny. In discussing figures from Hollywood's golden age, he has emphasized that admiration for their work should not prevent honest conversation about the environment they helped create. Some personalities, he noted, thrived on intimidation or rigid control, believing it essential to maintaining authority. Eastwood's discomfort with such attitudes stemmed from his belief that creativity flourishes best under respect rather than fear. His willingness to acknowledge unease around certain behaviors reflects a broader shift in how the industry views power. Rather than naming villains, Eastwood has focused on patterns, illustrating how unchecked authority can distort relationships and silence dissent. His perspective encourages a more balanced understanding of Hollywood history. Power, personality, and professional boundaries. Throughout his career, Eastwood encountered strong personalities whose intensity shaped both their art and their interactions. He observed how charisma and talent sometimes masked poor boundaries or dismissive attitudes toward others. Eastwood's own leadership style evolved as a conscious alternative, favoring professionalism over dominance. He has suggested that some older stars struggled to adapt as Hollywood changed, holding on to behaviors once tolerated but increasingly questioned. These reflections highlight generational tension rather than personal attack. Eastwood's insights emphasize that respect on set is not a modern invention, but a choice some made earlier than others. By sharing this view, he has reframed discussions about old Hollywood as lessons in growth rather than accusations rooted in resentment. The cost of silence in the studio-era Eastwood has also acknowledged that many people remained silent during Hollywood's earlier decades, not out of approval, but out of fear. Careers were fragile, contracts restrictive, and speaking out often came at great personal cost. This silence allowed certain behaviors to persist unchallenged. Eastwood's later candor reflects the privilege of longevity, the ability to speak once one's legacy is secure. He has expressed empathy for those who endured uncomfortable environments without power or protection. Rather than sensationalizing past misconduct, his reflections point to systemic issues, emphasizing how structures, not just individuals, enabled harmful norms. This measured honesty gives weight to his words, framing them as historical reflection rather than personal grievance. Evolution rather than condemnation. What distinguishes Eastwood's perspective is his refusal to reduce complex figures to simple labels. He has consistently acknowledged the artistic contributions of Hollywood legends while questioning the culture that surrounded them. His tone is reflective, not vindictive, recognizing that people are shaped by their time even as they shape it. Eastwood's own career demonstrates that authority can exist without cruelty and that leadership can evolve. By contrasting his approach with older models, he illustrates progress rather than superiority. His message is subtle but firm. Greatness in art should not excuse poor treatment of others, and acknowledging that truth strengthens rather than diminishes cinema's legacy. A personal philosophy of respect. Eastwood's reflections ultimately reveal more about his values than about the figures he discusses. He believes in discipline, restraint, and mutual respect, qualities he carried from his early life into his filmmaking career. These principles guided how he ran sets, collaborated with actors, and built long-lasting professional relationships. His discomfort with certain old Hollywood behaviors stems from this philosophy, not from a desire to provoke controversy. By speaking thoughtfully, he has encouraged younger generations to learn from history without being bound by it. His words serve as a reminder that integrity behind the camera matters as much as performance in front of it. Legacy, honesty, and looking forward. As one of the last living bridges to classic Hollywood, Clint Eastwood occupies a rare position of perspective and influence. His reflections on the past are not about tearing down legends, but about telling a fuller truth. By acknowledging both brilliance and imperfection, he contributes to a more honest understanding of film history. Eastwood's legacy is defined not only by iconic roles in acclaimed films, but by his insistence on professionalism and personal accountability. In sharing his observations, he invites audiences to appreciate old Hollywood without illusion, honoring its achievements while recognizing its flaws. That balance, rooted in honesty rather than hostility, may be one of his most enduring contributions.